Have you ever wondered if a level 1 character could become the new ruler of the Shivering Isles in Oblivion? Let's answer that question today. We are joining Kachow, the Wood Elf. Originally, I was going to try to do this run as fast as I could on stream. However, with some issues near the end of the video, you'll realize why I gave up on that. But the rules here are pretty simple. There is one rule: I cannot sleep in a bed because I cannot gain a level up. Skill increases are normal, they are going to happen. We'll see where we are at the end with each skill, but I'm not particularly focusing on any skills over others. I do what's pretty standard for me in these Oblivion challenge videos at the beginning. I basically just sprint through the entire tutorial and ignore everything, maybe picking up one or two items that I think might come in handy later. One of the additional rules I had for this challenge since I was streaming it was to not use any fast travel. I think fast travel makes for a less enjoyable viewing experience, and so when I stream these runs, I usually try not to fast travel as much as possible, unless I'm in a rush. But since I was prepared to sit all night and do this, I didn't really mind foregoing fast travel. And before I know it, I'm defending the Emperor.
Find him and close shut the jaws of Oblivion.
The jars of Oblivion. Why'd they leave their jars out?
Stranger,
Rude.
you chose.
When Baurus asks me what class I am, all I do is I pick the skills that I think will benefit this character the most. I definitely want to have a main attack style, that being Blade, but I also want to be able to back that up with marksman levels, because at level 1 I'm not going to have very many hit points to rely on in case things go south. I also pick up Restoration for that same reason. If need be, I can turn my blue bar into a secondary red bar. I eventually made it to the Strange Portal after a very long run and a very long swim, and found my way into the Shivering Isles. The first enemy that you encounter is a Grimmite, and the Grimmite most of the time will have a dagger. This dagger is going to be the best weapon I can find for myself for the game, blade-wise. And I also do spend a little bit of time collecting all of the gear from these adventurers that attempt to kill the Gatekeeper, because the starting funds are going to be very useful. I do need to pick up a couple things before I get into this. I have to pick up a bow for myself, as well as enough repair hammers to last me. But at this point, I can talk to both Nanette and Jared Iceveins in order to figure out the weaknesses of the Gatekeeper. Once I gathered all of the things I needed to fight the Gatekeeper, Jared and I were off to execute our plan. I poisoned my bow, and then I just pulled out my dagger to fight the Gatekeeper, although Jared didn't really seem to need my help all that much. And apparently the Gatekeeper has been taking some ballet lessons. But here I go, running through the Shivering Isles. I do stop at the first camp along the way to pick up the Fork of Horripilation, and I will give that to Big Head later, but first I'm going to pick up my first quest, which is to reactivate Zidillion. I spend some time in town upgrading my gear, and I pick up spells that I think might be useful from Errol in Crucible, but then I start to make my way to Zidillion. It's not too long of a walk, and once I'm inside, I can rely on sneak attacks to make my way through very quickly. Once the Fortress of Zidillion is reactivated, I get to be the first to operate it on a new group of adventurers. It doesn't go well for them, because I push the buttons. After that, I'm attacked by the first group of the Knights of Order. It goes surprisingly well. I get a little bit low, but all I have to do is rely on my healing from my spells, and I'm in a good spot. After learning of Zidillion's reactivation, Sheogorath implores me to learn more about the rulers of New Sheoth. Théoden is a very bad influence, and he wants us to do a bunch of drugs, and Syl is a paranoid tyrant. So I start gathering information for Syl's quest, because I know I will have to come back later anyway, before I run through Dunroot Burrow in order to find the Chalice of Reversal, and help Théoden with his degenerate drug problems. Let's do a hard save here. And then, look at that. The way through Dunroot Burrow is pretty winding, but I managed to find my way through all right. After finding my way through Dunroot Burrow and collecting the Chalice of Reversal, I can go ahead and finish solving the conspiracy behind Soule and pleasing both of the rulers of New Sheoth. Sheogorath is also very happy that I've done this, and he sends me over to Sylarn in order to relight the fires above the city. You get to side with either the Oriel or the Mazkin, the Golden Saints or the Dark Seducers, the two factions that sort of serve as law enforcement in the realm.
Death to the Mazkin, for the glory of Sheogorath. The Mazkin.
Damn, she just got cranked by that. And it doesn't really matter who you side with, the result is the same, and you can light the fire for either side of the city, even if you sided with the opposing side during the invasion of Sylarn. The fights themselves aren't that difficult. The fact that I have a bunch of NPCs with me just kind of makes rolling through here even easier. I have to open up a few doors and help them avoid a few traps, but other than that, the trip is relatively uneventful, and I find very little difficulty in making my way through.
Sheogorath!
Before the saint!
But she lights herself on fire. Then I get to light myself on fire. And I make my way back to New Sheoth, the entire way being on fire. Pretty fun. I don't think I've ever run back to New Sheoth while I was on fire. I choose to light the fire for Mania, I just have been, and Sheogorath gives me my new task, which is to replace one of the royal members. I chose Théoden, because it's funny. Soule crashes the party, saying that it's not Sheogorath's business to split them up and bring a new ruler in, but ultimately she declares herself to ally with Order, and this is something that hasn't happened before, so Sheogorath gives us another task. But before we can do much, I have to run back to the Fringe, which is the area that Passwall is in. It's in the Shivering Isles, but it's not really part of the Shivering Isles, it just sort of sits on the Fringe. Yeah, whatever. And I have to beat up some knights that are invading. So there's 3 waves initially. I kept it all in and just sped it up because this is actually the bow that Soule gives as a reward for finding out who's behind the conspiracy. I didn't remember this bow being as good as it is, but it worked out really well. This is the only bow I needed throughout the entire playthrough. Deactivating the tower is kind of a pain in the butt. You have to do the thing where you collapse the Obelisk of Order, and that requires at least 3 hearts of Order that you collect from the knights. The knights themselves aren't too big of a deal. It's just when I have to fight larger groups of enemies, that's when it starts to get a little bit difficult. Larger groups being 3 knights or more is usually a little bit difficult for me. I also managed to get killed a couple times in my escape. But eventually, Sheldon and I get out, and I can make my way back to Sheogorath to deliver the news that the Fringe is safe. Once again, I get to run across the map back to the Fringe. This time, it is to help Relmina rebuild the Gatekeeper. Sheogorath is pretty sure because the Gatekeeper is no longer there, people are just kind of walking in that shouldn't really be in the Shivering Isles, including the Knights of Order. So the best way to do that is to rebuild the Gatekeeper, and they can help with that little problem. So it's back into the Fringe to enter the Gardens of Flesh and Bone. This is initially where Relmina got the ingredients to construct the Gatekeeper, and we're gonna do it again. There are 4 things we need here, but after that we can pick the pieces for the Gatekeeper. I like the spiky head. That's pretty much the only part I care about, and the Gatekeeper can be reforged. This is when a Mazkin scout approaches and says that the Wellspring is under attack. One of the cool things about the Daedra that protect the Madgod's realm, the Oriel and the Mazkin, is that they are Daedra. They kind of look like a person, and they talk like a person, and they act like a person, but they are more similar to the Dremora than they are to an actual person. The difference being, if a person dies, they die, and whatever afterlife happens in the Elder Scrolls happens to them. But if a Daedra dies, their soul goes back to whatever plane of oblivion they originate from, and they come back after a time. If the Oriel or the Mazkin die here on the Shivering Isles, their souls go through the Wellspring in order for them to be reborn at a later time. That's at least what I've gathered through what lore I consumed. That's as best of an explanation I can give in 30 seconds or less. Once we arrive, Adeo is waiting for us, and she is ready to go into Pinnacle Rock and liberate the Wellspring. Once again, I have a lot of NPC help with me, and this is pretty easy, because I can just let everyone else do the heavy lifting if I need to. However, in the second half of the dungeon, I lose all of my help, and I have to do things on my own, and it's still not that bad. I can just cut a swath through the dungeon and make my way to the Wellspring room. Even the larger groups of enemies here don't really slow down my progress. When all is said and done, the Dark Seducers are once again free to move around the aisles, and the Wellspring is restored, and they reward me with their armor, which I decide to wear for the rest of the run because it's awesome. Getting back to the palace, I also realize that Adeo is still following me. I think this is a bug that can just happen with Oblivion followers sometimes, where when they're meant to stop following you, they just don't, and I just have a follower for the rest of the game, which is great because Sheogorath is now leaving because he's turning into Gigalag, and yeah, that's not good for the realm, but that's our time to shine. Haskell lets us know our next destination is Knife Point Hollow, where Order used to have a great library. Thinking that maybe we can find a book or something like that to help us craft a new staff, we're surprised to instead see a person in the place of a book. But it doesn't really matter, he serves the same purpose. He's pretty much memorized the important contents of the library. He lets us know we need two things. The first is going to be something to power the staff. The first thing we need is something to power the staff, while the second thing we need is something to house the staff. I decide to head over to Milcar first. Milcar? I hardly knew her. Ha ha ha. I made that joke live, and I regret every second of it, but it's not going to stop me from making more jokes that I regret. You should come see me live sometime. In order to claim the wood from the Tree of Shades that I need to make the housing for the Staff of Sheogorath, I have to defeat the Guardian of the Tree of Shades, that being a shadowy clone of myself, using a sword that is very scary. It does a lot of damage. This clone of me knows all of the spells that I know, which I would expect it to if it's a clone of me, but that makes me a very difficult target to defeat for me, so I wind up having to start over a couple times. What I found was that if I just make my own summon at the start, sort of like the way my clone does, it makes the fight a lot easier. You get 3 summons to choose from at this point that the main quest itself gives you access to. But after that's dealt with, I can make my way over to the Howling Halls, where a cult of light started by Sirta resides. Sirta is a unique NPC because she has witnessed the Grey March. Normally, the denizens of the Shivering Isles are not able to see the Grey Watch happen, mostly because they're pretty much defeated immediately. But Sirta was able to survive, and her eye holds a lot of power because of that. She has seen that which no others have seen. But with both of these pieces, we can go back to Dyrus, and he will forge us a new Staff of Sheogorath. But for it to be finished, we need to drench it in the Font of Madness, which is currently blocked up by Order crystals, so we have to go fix that problem. The cave is very little issue whatsoever. I can utilize sneak attack and take out just about everything. So we fight Syl, and finish that portion. This is the moment that Sheogorath trained us for, and we are meant to defend the keep until our dying breath if need be. Outside of the palace gates, there are 2 order obelisks. But once the 2 obelisks are dealt with, then Jyggalag will take the field of battle himself. But at long last, this is when it is time for the final stand. Jyggalag has arrived, and I am ready to do my duty. Oh! No! So I'm not sure why, but every time I made it to Jyggalag, the game would crash. This is the second attempt. Crash. This is the third attempt, where I made a quick save right before Jyggalag spawned. I figured, oh, maybe I have a time limit to defeat him. No, that wasn't it either. Next time, I just tried again. Still a crash. I tried again for posterity's sake, maybe thinking if I could get myself some distance and just attack. Yeah, that didn't work. Again, with the bow, maybe. Please. No, that is also not the correct answer. At this point, I'm thinking maybe it's because I still have Aldeo with me, so... At this point, I'm thinking maybe I just need to try to do the initial part again, where I activate the obelisks. But we can see once again, as soon as I start fighting Jyggalag, things go wrong. At this point, I'm pretty hopeless, and I don't really know what I can do to change it. I do try again where I remove Adeo from the fight entirely, but that doesn't help. Well, let's just try it again. This time, after Jyggalag spawns, I try to put as much distance as I can between me and him before the game crashes. I think, oh, maybe if I see Jyggalag for too long, then that will make my computer crash. I don't know, I'm kind of grasping at straws at this point. I realize as well that Jyggalag can't get up that stairwell, so this is a really easy way to cheat the boss if you need to, but it doesn't fix my problem. I think maybe I just need to start from a fresh save again, and I try the same thing, but as soon as Jyggalag spawns in, it's straight back to my desktop. I'm starting to run out of ideas here, but I just keep trying because I've already sunk about 8 hours into this challenge at this point, and I really just want to be able to kill Jyggalag and finish. But I can't. So what now? Well, you can see I'm doing the challenge again, but this time on the original engine. Ka-chow, but again. And I make basically the same character over again. I make my way to the Shivering Isles. I fight the Grummite. I take my dagger. I kill the Gatekeeper. I do a backflip before that, though. That was pretty cool. And actually, Jared winds up killing the Gatekeeper. But, you know, this second time around, I am going to be using fast travel, and before I even start the main quest, I am going to run around the map and discover every major area I am going to need to go to. So I go and find Zadillion, I go and find Milkar, I go and find Dunroot Burrow, I go and find Pinnacle Rock. I find everything before I even need to start the main quest. I'm hoping that this will cut down on travel time significantly, and I can be out of here before I need to go to bed in the morning. Might as well grab them. East Ring of Conjuration. And Spell Tome, Flammable Touch. Okay. I mean, that's a decent touch spell for... Oh, wow. Okay. That's absurd. That amulet was not an amulet that I got in the first run, but I figure this is a new run, so whatever. I'm pretty much doing the exact same thing. I'm following the same steps that I followed on the last character. I don't think I picked the exact same body parts as I did for the Gatekeeper, but honestly, whatever. That's a pretty small point. The main idea is to try to redo the run as close as I did it the first time. And I am trying to stay as faithful as I can to that original run. But that being said, there really isn't much to show here. I'm just showing the battle through Sylarn because it's something to look at. Everything else that happened was basically the same, and there's not much more to say. Up until the end, at least, where, well, Adeo didn't follow me after I was finished with Pinnacle Rock, so maybe that had something to do with it. Hello. Nice. But now I can finally try to take on Jiggalag and see who will win this realm. Something kind of funny happened in the original game of Oblivion that did not happen in the remaster. There were two people stuck in the courtyard during this fight. The first one is Anya Herrick, and the other one is Kithlin. Those are two NPCs that are associated with the House of Mania and two of Syl's advisors. Oh, wow.
You hold the staff, but you are no Daedric prince. This ends as it always does.
Alright, there we go.
Enough! I am beaten. The Grey March is ended.
But with that climactic fight, the challenge is over, and I emerge victorious. I have become the new Madgod, and therefore the new ruler of the Shivering Isles. Well, this video was extremely fun to make, despite the fact that I had to essentially do the challenge over again because my system wasn't running the game properly. I've been noticing that the remaster has a lot of crashes, and hopefully that is going to fix itself eventually. But this was pretty fun, even though in Oblivion, level scaling is a thing, and something like this would probably be a lot harder in Morrowind. I just think it was fun to try. You don't get items that are nearly as good when you're a lower level in Oblivion, so it makes things a little bit more difficult, but eventually your skills start to level to a point where nothing is really that difficult to fight anymore, because you're just so good at things compared to them. Anyway, thanks for watching. I do appreciate that people will sit here and watch a video that I make. It's a pretty fun hobby to just dip into. So, I don't have too much more to say. Kachow did his job. Well, actually, Kachow didn't do his job. It was Kachow, but again, that did his job. If you would like to continue watching these videos, I do appreciate that. And it'll make it easier if you just hit the subscribe button so that you can find my videos easier. A like and a comment also go a long way. It shows that some people do enjoy my content and it pushes the video on the algorithm a little bit more. I just figured I'd say that. If you want to make a suggestion, I do like getting suggestions. I haven't had all that many, but somebody suggested that I do Morrowind with the Fork of Horripilation, and I did. So, that video exists. Anyway, I feel like I'm just kind of babbling at this point, but thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Maybe on stream. Goodbye.